Can you see us okay? Yes, so. Okay. You're going to pick it up. Wonderful. And then we go to Rob or to me.
I don't know.
Okay.
How do we want to do it?
However,
Why don't you turn it over to me? And
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So, welcome everybody today to RiverCOG. It is, again, my true pleasure to introduce a friend, not only to Old Saybrook, to the region, to the state. Last time I saw Senator Blumenthal was on a Tuesday night in January in Old Saybrook. And it was the Old Saybrook Chamber annual awards. And there was Senator Blumenthal giving the Volunteer of the Year award at the Old Saybrook Chamber. And I said to myself, this guy shows up. And we all know that. We all know that and we hear about that. But what you have to realize is how important that is, that he shows up. And he shows up, I know he shows up for Old Saybrook. I've worked with the senator over the years, over the last 11 years on so many things from Plum Island. Now the Amtrak Bridge is moving along. And of course, we're here today to talk about the IIJA and some of the grants associated with that. The senator has been just a true friend to Connecticut. Every time he's around me, he gets introduced, of course, by a Republican, but I know he likes that. But it doesn't matter because, you know, you can differ on a lot of things, but we can work together on the things that are important to us. And we all know that the recovering from the pandemic with the Save Our Stages Act and now with the IIJA has been so critical to the area, to our town. And we're looking to move this forward with the Safe Streets for All grant. And thank you, Senator, for being here. And thank you for all you do for the town, the region, and the state.
thank you, Carl. Thank you so much. I'm always really elated to be with Carl Fortuna, whether it is in Old Saybrook at the Cape, as we were, for that Chamber of Commerce meeting, or anywhere in Eastern Connecticut. In fact, I'm always elated to be in Eastern Connecticut because you guys get it about working together. Doesn't matter what party, Democrat, Republican, independent, unaffiliated, what we really want is good things for our state and particularly for the people of Eastern Connecticut on their roads and streets. That's why we're here today. The Infrastructure and Jobs Act is really a very dramatic opportunity. It provides not only for rail and bridges and broadband, but also for roads and streets. The Safe Streets and Roads for All part of the infrastructure program is a profoundly important recognition that our roads in Connecticut are deadlier than ever. Pedestrian deaths and injuries on our roads are at a 40-year high. Literally 75 last year in Connecticut, pedestrians or cyclists killed on Connecticut roads. That is unacceptable. So we need to make our roads safer, not only for the motorists and their passengers, but also for our pedestrians and cyclists. In Eastern Connecticut, I know probably there are more pedestrians walking, enjoying the incredible scenery of Eastern Connecticut, or biking, cycling, than anywhere else in Connecticut. And I was out walking yesterday with my wife, and we had to be extra careful on one of the roads where we were walking because motorists now are going faster. Cars have become safer. We're building safer cars, but our roads are deadlier. And that's why this measure is so important. Pedestrian walkway, cyclists' rights of way, making our roads and streets safer for everyone. And the $2.4 million coming to Connecticut is out of a $5 billion program nationally. Now, you may think $5 billion sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. But compared to the total of more than $1 trillion in the infrastructure and jobs program, it's a tiny fraction. So my message today is, let's use this money to plan boldly for safer roads and streets. Planning is important because we ought to be using more of that $1 trillion for the actual construction. The Safe Roads and Streets measure is something that I have championed because I see the carnage as a result of these kinds of fatalities. And I'll just give you a couple of statistics that I think are important. Last year alone, 300 driver and passenger and pedestrian deaths. I mentioned 75 pedestrian and cyclist deaths alone. In the period 2017 to 2021, 254 fatal pedestrian accidents. So there is an imperative here. This grant is for $240,000 to the Lower Connecticut River COG. This COG is one of the most active and energetic in the country. We have some of the leaders here. And I'm very proud that locally, whether it's in Old Saybrook or all around Southern and Eastern Connecticut, we have the kind of leadership that's represented here today. And I will be back, I hope, once the planning and the construction begins with more announcements. I hope it isn't only my money that you love me for. But in fact, I should just stress that these kinds of programs are the result of work done by myself with Chris Murphy and Joe Courtney. We work together as a team. Chris Murphy, myself, Joe Courtney, we fight together for Southeastern Connecticut and particularly for this program, which is so important. So thank you all for being here, and I'll turn it over to Rob.
Okay, sure. Just 1 minute before Rob starts, I just wanted to thank the senator. Thank you for coming today. And also, I just wanted to invoke the memory of Representative Hugh Williams, who was a great supporter of RiverCOG and the city of Middletown, and you know, looking at those issues of wrong-way drivers on Route 9, but also on 91, has been increasingly common in Connecticut and concerning to us. And we are going to be looking at the issues involved in how do we reduce the number of wrong-way drivers on our expressways and hopefully prevent some of these tragic deaths that we have unfortunately seen in our region. But thank you again, Senator, and I'll turn over to our Senior Transportation Planner, Rob Harriman.
Yep. Okay. FY22 was the basically the first year of the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. Most state subdivisions were eligible to apply. There were two types of grants: action plan grants and implementation grants. Implementation grants were for basically implementing recommendations from the action plans. The purpose of the program is basically to come up with local initiatives to reduce the number of deaths and serious injuries on our transportation infrastructure. Let's see. I'm just drawing a blank here. RiverCOG is one of 6 organizations in Connecticut to receive an award in this first round, along with 2 other COGs and 3 municipalities. Basically, what we intend to do is work on our existing regional transportation safety plan, which was adopted in 2021, and come up with develop a series of implementation projects that we can submit under the future implementation grant program. Basically, our next steps are we are meeting next week with the Federal Highway Division Office, basically to go over, the initial first steps of where do we go from here. After that, we will come up with an agreement with USDOT. Once that's in place, the next steps would be to kind of refine the scope and go out to an RFQ to look for a consultant. Once we go through the consultant agreement and selection process, we would probably take about 2 years to come up with the action plan. And once the action plan's in place, we would have the opportunity to, apply for more funding to actually implement various projects from that plan. So basically, we look forward to working with this exciting new project.
Thank you. Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Just one as of right now. I guess the one thing I was just wondering actually was why is it so especially important to bring monies for safer roads to this part of Connecticut? You consider what, the valley, what the tri-town region, this area has to offer, Essex, Deep River, Chester, places such as that.
Well, I can let Carl speak to why he feels that there's a need for this kind of program. These guys are really, they're so close to the people who live here. They're leaders and really effective spokespeople and advocates, and it's really due to their advocacy that we recognize the need for this part of the state to receive this money. So that's the first point. But also, there are a lot of roads in this part of the state that were built quite a few years ago. Cars went slower. Partly because cars generally went slower, a few decades ago. But also as cars have become safer, people have just driven faster. We live in a much more rapidly paced time now, and a lot more people are walking or cycling. It's now cool to walk or cycle. And so the combination of faster cars, more use of the roads to walk or bike is an imperative. And this part of the state also has probably more need for this kind of implementation plan. I'll just say one thing. Rob has gone through it in very good detail and given you an explanation of the various steps that are required. I am hoping that those steps can be accelerated somewhat. So we'll be able to make the pitch for more money for this COG and the area encompassed by the COG when they begin construction. Carl?
Yeah, just briefly, the senator brings up a great point that so many of these roads are older roads, narrow roads where maybe cycling and running and walking were not as common 70, 80 years ago. But even roads that were built maybe in the 70s or 80s were not as focused on safety. Old Saybrook's Main Street is a state highway. It's a 4-lane highway, but it's incredibly dangerous to cross. And that is one of the projects that we are working on right now in the planning phase. And it's very expensive. It might be $1 million to maybe raise the curbside area, put some blinking lights in the middle so that when you're about to approach crossing Main Street, you're on an elevated platform so cars can see you. We have had incidents on our Main Street, and I'm sure Rob and Tim, all of us can talk to incidents that we've had on major spokes and streets in our town. So I'm looking forward to working with the senator, working with the COG to, number one, get these funds and also start implementing them.
And I'll just add, that there's a last mile problem. We have 3 shoreline youth commuter rail stations, Saybrook, Westbrook, and Clinton, but you need to provide safe access to those train stations if you expect people to use them. Same thing with our bus routes through our S2A transit district. Making sure that pedestrians and cyclists are safely accommodated on our transportation network is important in getting people to use public transportation, help address traffic, help address CO2 emissions, and also help create more livable neighborhoods and community centers. No one's going to let their kid out to a bike or play in the neighborhood if they don't think it's safe. And those lifelong habits of walking and cycling are important in so many different ways to our communities, but also to deal with the issues that we face.
Great points. All set? Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator. We appreciate it.
Safe travel. Where are you? Philadelphia?
I'm in Philadelphia at the National Planning Conference. So, literally this is sandwiched between professional conferences, learning it from actually the feds, FTA, but also other colleagues around the country about how we address these issues of safety. So,
Well, tell them not to take any of our money.
well, I was talking to FTA to say, how do we bring more money to Connecticut? So, yeah.
We're working on that.
Yeah. Thank you again, and thank you for coming by today.
I look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, thanks.
Take care.
Bye, Sam.